Today I'm going to talk about one of the most shocking and unethical medical studies in American history, the Tuskegee syphilis study. This experiment was run by the government and targeted hundreds of poor African American men in Alabama. The study lasted for 40 years from 1932 to 1937. It involved deception, denial of treatment, and deep institutional racism. The men in the experiment were never told the truth about the studies that were being done or the condition that they had. The men were used for subjects for observation. The impact of the study still continues to affect the public trust in medicine today. This wasn't just a case of a few bad decisions. It was a deliberate and organized violation of human rights. The story of the Tuskegee raises serious questions about medical ethics, government accountability, and the treatment of vulnerable populations. As we go through these, we'll break down what happened, how it was covered, and what consequences followed. It's important to study this event not just as a history, but as a warning. It teaches us how damaging silence, secrecy, and power imbalances can be. The Tuskegee study began in 1932 in Macon County, Alabama, one of the poorest areas in the country. It involved 600 African American men, 399 of whom had syphilis, and 201 who served in a control group. The men were told that they were receiving treatment for bad blood, a common but vague term used to describe various illnesses. In reality, they were not being treated at all. The goal was to study how syphilis would progress in the body when left untreated. The men did not know this was the true purpose. One of the worst parts of the Tuskegee study was the government deception. The U.S. Public Health Service ran the study and never told the men truth about their diagnosis. The doctors kept detailed records but avoided calling it syphilis around the med. Even when military doctors tried to treat some of the men who were going to World War II, they were stopped by officials involved in the study. The goal was to keep the men untreated so researchers could observe the disease. This was not the case of medical confusion or bad communication. It was a clear plan to deceive the men who never had the chance to make an informed decision about their health. The doctors involved lied, altered records, and continued the study under false pretenses, even when the vaccine for syphilis had been discovered. The government used manipulative tactics to keep the men in the study. They offered free meals, rides to the clinic, and basic medical checkups. These were meaningful benefits for the men living in extreme poverty. Many of the men had never received medical care in the past. The doctors also used the trusted name Tuskegee Institute to make the study seem legitimate. This helped persuade the men to continue participating in the study. Even painful procedures like spinal taps were disguised as helpful. The doctors called them special treatments, even though they were not curing anything. The men were confused by the medical terms and trusted professionals in white coats. This trust was used against them, and their suffering was watched and recorded without their understanding. It was a betrayal of the doctor-patient relationship. When syphilis is left untreated, it can cause serious health problems. Over time, the disease can cause brain, heart, and other organs to fail. Many of the men in the study became blind or developed mental illnesses, or even died from the infection. But because they thought that they were being treated, they kept returning for care, and they kept returning to the doctors, who watched these symptoms get worse and worse over time, but as they slowly died. The damage didn't stop with just the men in the study. Some of the men unknowingly passed the disease to their wives, and some of their children were born with syphilis. This affected entire families and entire communities. The emotional pain of being misled for so long was deep, and still remains to this day. The effect of the Tuskegee study didn't end when it was shut down. It left a deep scar on the relationship between Black Americans and the medical system. Many people stopped trusting doctors, some avoided hospitals entirely. Even when they needed help, this led to worse health outcomes for entire communities. Fear replaced faith in public health. Researchers later discovered that after the study was exposed, the life expectancy of Black men dropped significantly. One positive result of the Tuskegee study was the push for ethical reform afterward. The government and scientific community knew they had to do better. Institutional review boards, or IRBs, were created to review medical studies. These boards make sure that the participants are protected and studies follow ethical rules. No study involving humans can move forward without their approval. The Tuskegee syphilis study is not just a story from the past. It is a warning for the future. It reminds us that science must never come before basic human rights. No one should be used as a means to an end. Every person deserves to know the truth about their health, and every person should have the right to say yes or no. This story also shows how long-lasting the effects of injustice can be. We cannot change what happened, but we can make sure it never happens again. That means being honest, holding institutions accountable, and treating every life with respect. The men of the Tuskegee were failed by their country. Remembering their story is the first step toward by making things right.